today I'm going to go over briefly what you should be looking for when looking up articles for the video games and violence debate assignment that you'll be doing. So first of all, you're going to need to find some research articles and sort of break them down and explain what they're trying to say, explain whether or not they're, valuable, etc. And for those who are unfamiliar with scholarly research, or at least just how to start a search for this, I'm just going to show you how to do that. So you notice I just go to Google Scholar here, and I'm not going to be able to access many articles because I am working from home, but we'll try to make sure that that's not a problem anyways. Excuse me. Alright, so Google Scholar, I will type in just something very simple like video games, or how about violence in video games. And you see that I get quite a few articles right here. One thing that you want to look for right here is look to see where these things have been published. So normally published articles will be something in this green type right over here. If it's, obviously since this is a Google Scholar search, you'll probably find things in journals instead of, CNN or Wired.com. And it's usually good to find research articles versus regular articles, especially for this assignment. Although when you are doing the debate, you can obviously look on prior literature from popular publications as well. Excuse me. So, I'm looking right here at this effects of violent video games on aggressive behavior. And quite a long list, and it's written by C.A. Anderson. This is Craig Anderson from Iowa State University, and you'll be seeing his name quite often about people who talk about aggression and increased aggression in people who play violent video games. And one of the things that will show you that this is a very serious article or that people take it seriously is right over here. So it's cited by 744 people, or at least 774 articles. So it's fairly reputable, or at least people like to use it when citing their research. So let's take a look at something like this. So I get a page not found, but I have this here that I gave you guys earlier that you should be able to look up articles or at least give you a good idea about some of the literature out there. So I'm going to just use this list, but most of the time you can just look up something like this on Google Scholar. So if you saw, I loaded up this longitudinal effects of violent video games on aggression in Japan and the United States. And so you notice that it has all the articles here. Make sure that you list those authors when you're submitting the articles that you've looked at. And also something that'd be good is to look up articles from both the pro and the con side of violence in video games. So Craig Anderson, obviously one of the people who, or at least is one of the people who talks about how games make people more aggressive and violent. And one of the things that you're going to want to look at is right here. So the abstract. Some things, especially when you're doing this article, or at least doing this research assignment, things to look for. So, what does the article say? Usually you can find that right here in the abstract. So, youth worldwide played video games, objective, design, participants, and then there's conclusions. So, for here, what does the article say? Longitudinal effects confirm earlier experimental and cross-sectional studies that have suggested that playing violent video games is a significant factor for later physically aggressive behavior. And so we know what that says there. The design of the experiment. So if you are not a person who is savvy in statistics, you should probably get a really quick lesson before you go into this. So you see here that there's p-values, there's b-values, there will be sample sizes that you're going to need to look at, and it'll be good to understand what types of studies they've done to come up with their conclusions. Is it a laboratory setting? Is it a natural setting? These things will be quite important to think about when you're trying to chart whether or not behaviors are happening in natural or unnatural habitats. And then also pros and cons of the experiment. So, like I was talking about, does it take place in a laboratory? Well, if it takes place in a laboratory, we don't normally do things in laboratories. So, well, at least live our natural lives in laboratories. So we may not be able to get the full body of research or at least full findings there because we're not seeing anything in a natural habitat. But if we were seeing things in a natural habitat, researchers are not able to control many of the things that go on, which means that some of the results can just be spontaneous and maybe don't have anything to do with the actual research. So, it's something to consider as well. Um, so you should take a look at this. Some names that you're going to see a lot are Craig Anderson, Brad Bushman, C.J. Ferguson. So a lot of these names will be seen for the pros and cons sides of violence in video games. These are the four seen aggression and violence from video game play. C.J. Ferguson is the ones against it. They do a lot of meta-analyses. There are quite a few articles from both these. So even if you just do a Google Scholar search, looking at that, you should be pretty good. And that's just a really quick example of how to look for some articles. If you have any questions, just make sure to email.